Hey guys, it's Birdie. If you hear some background noise, it's because the husband and I are headed about 4 hours north to our city house to check on a few things, and he's driving, I'm riding in the passenger seat, and I thought I've got plenty of time to share a few thoughts that I've got about last night, what happened on Amber's live stream. So I watched Amber's video last night when her Aunt Tammie had called in, and I've got a few opinions on what this was for Tammie and what this means for Amber. This vindicated Tammie. Amber has spent over a decade slandering her aunt and her aunt's side of the family. From blaming her aunt's daughter of some very serious things, then recanting her story and blaming others, to later also recant those stories, to saying her aunt disowned her because her aunt was fatphobic. Amber has had a lot to say about her aunt over the years. Keep in mind, during all this time, she also aired a lot of private family information that she made public for monetary gain. Tammie is finally free. She got her chance to say what she's been burying for years, and it's clear to me that Tammie has been hurt for a very long time. I find it so interesting that Amber comes up with accusations and stories from her childhood that no one else remembers. But when Amber is faced with someone else's story about her, a seemingly truthful story with other witnesses present, Amber doesn't remember anything about it. I'm talking about that moment in the stream last night when Aunt Tammie talked about the plate of spaghetti that Amber piled so high, even her obese dad said it was enough, and Amber kept adding more to it. Amber couldn't remember anything about that story. That felt very convenient to me because she's always talked about food insecurities when she was with her parents. And then we hear the story about gluttony, not the starvation that Amber talked about during her relationship with Beck. Amber's stories always seem to have a catch, you see. Her stories always fit into the narrative she wants you to believe, and that narrative is specifically formulated to lead to one place and one place only: victimhood. Let's take a look at that scenario. Amber was an obese child with obese parents and potentially other family members who struggled with weight issues. And I'm not judging anyone for that, it happens. Amber talked about her dad buying everything off the McDonald's menu, and this was during a video during the Beck era. Amber said that she only ate a lot because she had food insecurity, and growing up, she never knew when she was going to get to eat again, so she would eat a lot those few times when she did have food to eat. So my question is, why was Amber obese? We've seen pictures of her as a very young child, and she was already morbidly obese. If you are starving to death, never knowing when you will get your next meal, and you're only eating a lot during those few times you actually get to eat, you're not going to be super morbidly obese. Tammie's recollection of events with great detail told us that Amber has always been a glutton, and even as a kid, she's always eaten huge amounts of food. But think about it in this context. Amber's narrative. She wants people to think that her weight is not her fault. She's always made excuses for her weight. She's blamed it on genetics, starvation, lymphedema, lipedema, BED, food addiction, CPTSD, smoking too much Delta, and even because she's just an emotional eater because she has suffered trauma. Amber never says the truth, which is, I'm 600 pounds because I make the choices to be. I maintain 600 pounds because I eat over 7,000 calories a day. I'm 600 pounds because I choose to be inactive and I choose to be a glutton. But when Aunt Tammie tells a truthful story about Amber's eating habits that go back decades, Amber remembers nothing of that situation. How convenient. It seems to me that it just didn't fit into her narrative, so it never happened. Amber also seems to write her own stories to create a life that she wants to be true, but it's not reality. Amber wants to be the perpetual victim, but we know she's not. She wants people to feel sorry for her, but we don't. She wants it to be okay for her to lie because it's a trauma response. She wants it to be okay for her to crash out because it's her unregulated BPD. She wants it to be okay for her to be 600 pounds and neglect her pets because she can't take care of them and she's still gaining, because although she's a self-admitted food addict, she's really sober and just smoked a lot of Delta and got the munchies. It's so hectic, you guys. But you see, it's never Amber's fault. Finally, though, Aunt Tammie doesn't have to carry the burden of the lies Amber has told. She doesn't have to sit quietly while Amber rewrites history, a history Aunt Tammie was very present in. Tammy talked about watching Amber's videos and seeing firsthand how Amber lies and manipulates situations in her favor. She does this to all of us. And she said that she thinks Amber is pathetic and she's done with her. Most of this time, while Tammy was exhuming the past, opening that casket, and showing us the absolute truth of what those skeletons really are, Amber sat there rocking back and forth, undoubtedly thinking that it made her look so vulnerable and weak or like a victim. To me, she just looked stupid. Amber looked guilty as hell and caught. She looked caught. You see, the only consequence Amber will ever really face, besides the tragic life she forces herself to live, it's the same thing that she fears the most. The truth. The truth is Amber's biggest enemy, and the truth is Tammy's weapon. I read in the comments, and I left plenty of my own, about Amber and accountability. And this is a public service announcement to the Am babies who are seemingly confused. Amber did not take accountability last night, guys. I cannot recall her ever taking accountability. And I read so many comments with people saying that Amber definitely takes accountability and just look at the way she took accountability with what happened with Beck. Amber never to this day took any accountability for the shit that she did to Beck. Amber uses the words, "I'm taking accountability, you guys," or she'll say, "I'm being accountable for that. It's so hectic." That is not what it means to be accountable, Amber. I hope this is a learning moment for those who need it. To be accountable, you don't just sort of admit to wrongdoing while shifting part of the blame onto another. To truly be accountable, one must take full responsibility for their choices. It doesn't matter what someone else said or did. It's to take full responsibility for what you did, to accept that you did contribute to the outcome and you are responsible for your consequences. And then you work to make self-improvements as to not become a repeat offender. You work to grow, change, learn, and evolve so you can get better and you won't keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. When has Amber ever been known to do that? Whether it's her failed familial relationships, her failed personal relationships, her super morbid obesity, her dog using the bathroom all over the floors, her lack of education, her lack of bathing, her food addiction, her inability to drive, the way she acts like a 12-year-old and speaks like a 9-year-old, her refusal to work, refusal to exercise, refusal to go to therapy even though she can afford it, refusal to learn. Everything is always someone or something else's fault. It's never hers. If she can't come up with an excuse that she believes validates her poor choices, then she pulls the mental health card and starts blaming random disorders that most people don't even think she has. But even if she does, let's just pretend for a moment that Amber has several diagnosed mental health conditions. How does that exonerate her from her choice of behaviors? She seems to think that being mentally ill means that she's never liable for her own poor choices. But take notice that if she thinks she's done something good, she says, "I did that. I did that." So which is it, Amber? You're so severely mentally disabled that you're completely incapable of ever being held accountable for your own choices, at which point you should be committed or institutionalized. Or you're not, and you should be praised and celebrated for any small feat like being able to build your own salad at 35 years old. It doesn't make sense, and I think Amber knows this. She knows there are receipts to prove that she lies. It's why, in my opinion, the mental health card is so important to Amber. It's the one thing she believes she can use to basically get out of jail free and not be reprimanded for it, because you can't shame someone for mental health problems. She should be able to look at her own mother's past and realize that that's not the way things work. Her mother was a drug addict with clear mental health problems, and she committed a crime and went to prison for many years because of that crime. Her mother being an addict, having been homeless, having been the survivor of trauma, having been the survivor of an abusive spouse, didn't keep her out of prison. Because ultimately, within the legal system, you're either of such diminished capacity at the time of the event or crime that you cannot be held liable and you get committed, or you're not of such diminished capacity, and despite your mental health issues, you do know what you're doing and you are 100% responsible for you. But claiming to be mentally ill is Amber's holy grail of excuses. She's like, yeah, I really mistreated so and so, but it was my untreated trauma that I never got appropriate therapy for, you guys. Or, yeah, I lied right there, but it's because of CPTSD. Or, I raged and got violent, but it was just the psycho monster in me that was reacting to something. Or this, and this is my favorite because I laugh hysterically. She's smugly straight-faced with arrogance in her voice, knowing she's surrounded with truth and there's no way out, simply says, "It was my BPD." Notice how she calls it her BPD, like it's something she owns or claims to be a personal possession. I think she does this because, in a way, it is. She uses it in similar ways that someone might flash their credentials. Think about a police officer parking in a no parking lane because there's an emergency inside, and he or she flashes their badge as they run in to justify or validate what they're doing. To me, that's the way Amber flashes the BPD card. She must really think it exonerates her choices, but it doesn't. Those of us who are very different from Amber can see her so clearly for who she chooses to be. But it seems that her followers are using her life as an example to excuse their own failures. I'm proud of Tammie for speaking out. I think she has definitely done some things that aren't great. I think she's human and she makes mistakes like we all do. But I think she's tried so hard to grow and learn and get better. From the 16 years of therapy she chose to take to trying to save her sister and her niece, I think Tammie has a strong sense of self and that there's a fighter that lives inside of her. And I'm proud of her for standing up and fighting for her family, too. I agree with Tammie when she said the whole side of the Reid family was just like Amber. Rude, violent, out of control liars, manipulators, and the such. And don't quote me on this, but at one point, I think I heard Tammie say that they were trash. Anyway, Aunt Tammie made it clear that she won't be manipulated into silence anymore by anyone. There was a part where Amber, of all people, the same woman who has monetized family secrets and some slandering of family members for over a decade, actually had the balls to ask Aunt Tammie, "Why are you talking about private family matters on here?" I don't think Amber is firmly enough planted in reality to realize how ridiculous, stupid, ironic, and pathetic that made her look. It's always the rules for thee and not for me when dealing with Miss Amber Reid. Amber is in her mid-30s and makes a living trolling, lying, manipulating, slandering, and in my opinion, bullying others. She talks shit for attention, then hides behind decades-old trauma to shield herself from any liability. And Tammie finally said, "Enough is enough." I also found it very, very telling that Tammie tried having a relationship with Amber before and during Amber's foster care era. But Christine, that's Amber's mother, said no. And think about something else that Aunt Tammie said. Even after Amber moved to Oklahoma, she could only be around Amber if the mom was also present. But let's go back to Amber's foster care days. According to Tammie, Amber's mother did not want Tammie seeing Amber during foster care days because Christine allegedly didn't want Tammie seeing what Amber was going through. But I don't believe that's accurate. My theory is that maybe Christine didn't want Tammy to see how Amber was behaving, despite being out of her mother's neglectful household. Because at that time, I don't think Christine wanted to be held accountable for her part in young Amber's learned behaviors. Or another theory is that possibly Christine feared that Tammy could get Amber to raise her. Think about this possibility. Christine has seemingly always been jealous of or resented Tammy as a person. Even last night, Tammy briefly mentioned Amber and Christine talking shit about Tammy or Tammy's home during a Thanksgiving get-together that Tammy had hosted and invited them to. So it seems to me that Christine, the loving Christian whom Amber says is such a good person who does good things, is actually still a lot like Amber. These live streams and tell-all interviews are revealing a much different Christine than the one Amber tries to portray. But at least to me, it aligns with what we know to be true, at least what Christine's past tells us from her public records. It is said that one's past can be the best predictor of their future, especially for those not known for growth or change. But allegedly, Christine is sober now. Let's just really take a look at that, though. She has made efforts and changes to drop her drug addiction, but I don't think she's completely sober, and I don't think she's really healthy. She smokes a lot. She gambles nonstop, and her relationship with Amber, she enables her to eat more and more and more fast food. Those high calorie, high carb, sugary foods that are going to end up ending Amber's life. Her mother encourages and enables her to eat those. And then Christine's relationship with her own mother and her sister Tammy seemed to also be volatile and broken at best. Amber would have us believe that Christine grew angel wings in a halo, and many, even those who do not support Amber, seem to fawn over Amber's mom. But I don't. I never did, and unless there's a huge shift in Christine's behaviors, I won't. I'm not only forming all these opinions on Christine due to what Tammy has revealed, but also on my own observations of her. The way she behaves on camera with Amber pretending to be besties forever and ever is very different from the tired, annoyed voice that answered the phone one night recently on Amber's stream and basically said, "What do you want?" I believe Tammy. I do believe that Amber speaks poorly, rudely, and disrespectfully to her mother's face, and I don't believe that it's just Grandma's bad memory. I've come to this conclusion because basically, I think Amber's told on herself again. When Tammy told Amber last night that Amber is very hateful toward her mother at times, and Amber responded, "So you've been talking to Grandma again?" Think about that. If Amber hadn't known that she's been shit-talking her mother in front of her grandmother, then how did Amber conclude that Aunt Tammy found it out from the grandmother? Again, it's always about victimhood with Amber. Always. Amber's like the perfect storm for playing the lead role of the victim, though. She's had a rough start in life. She's uneducated, and she speaks in a way that makes her seem very mentally, emotionally, and intellectually stunted. She puts on the persona of a vulnerable person. She's very obviously, based on her appearance, in her mid-30s to early 40s, but she's over 600 pounds and she wears pigtails and carries purses intended for young children. I'm not surprised she's gotten away with playing the victim for as long as she has, but I believe the eye of the storm has shifted because Amber can no longer slander her family members for money. Aunt Tammy is watching, and she will strike Amber down faster than Amber's DoorDash is on speed dial. Amber, it looks to me like the game just changed. Tammy has the ball in her court, and new rules have been implemented. Your victim narrative will no longer work either, because Aunt Tammy knows you better than your own mother, and she's brought the receipts that could effectively end this character you've been playing for over a decade. I'm guessing it's going to get really messy, but it doesn't have to. Amber, you can end this all with one sentence. It's as easy as saying, "I'm ready to tell the truth." Everything in this video is 100% based on the way I perceived the conversation going with Amber and her Aunt Tammy on the live stream last night. It's not fact. Everyone needs to watch that video for themselves, form your own opinion, do your own research. Don't harass anyone in the video. This is just me sharing my opinions on the information that I gathered from watching that video last night. So don't take anything that I'm saying as anything more than just my opinion. That's all that it is. It's never fact. Well, I want to thank everyone if you did listen to this, and I'm ready to see what's going to happen next. I think this is long from over, and I'll make these little videos as I can just to kind of let you know what my opinion is. But just as I'm sharing my opinion, I'm also posting these videos because I want to hear your opinions about it too. So please comment down below and let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Maybe it's both. Maybe you agree with part of what I'm saying, but not the other part. Tell me in the comments below. Again, my name is Birdie, and I hope to see you on my next video. Bye, guys.